we're recording now, but can you all show your videos, please? Everyone. Everyone, very part of your participation, right? So we're going to kick off with our first group presentation, and that is next. And the membership of that group is Sarah, Zol, Nadia, Nada, Emma, and Ahmad. And what is important with the group presentations is everyone, please, everyone is expected to be interactive. This is not, okay, O'Connor's not talking, so I don't have to be interactive now. No, you have to be interactive because I need you to bring energy to the group's presentation. Maybe during when they ask for it, or definitely after. We don't want any delay. We don't want any latency. Do you know what latency means? Put your hand up if you know what latency means. Latency is a technical term for delay. That is, can you put your hand up and ask a question? And I have to wait for 3 seconds for someone to put their hand up. Okay, so we don't want any latency when it comes to you interacting with the group. And so group, they've got 12 minutes and it can go very, very fast, but managed correctly, it can be very, very effective, probably more effective than my lectures. And at the end of that, there's question and answer. But during those presentations, you may be asked to participate. And if you are, we want your full energy. Okay, energy, please. Okay, and because this helps the group and that helps you, because when you present, you'd like to have that energy too. So without further to do, are you using any interactive Poll Me Anywhere apps or anything like that, group? Next.
They're not using.
You're not using that. Okay, so
we're expecting to just use the reactions and the chat box. So.
Okay, that's great. Okay, so everyone be aware of that and pay attention when you're asked to give a reaction in the presentation. So I'll let the group begin when they're ready. Okay, you may begin. Can you give the group a hand to start? I can't hear you.
I see some hands.
Okay, big voice.
All right.
Is everyone seeing this?
Yeah, everyone can see the slides, right? Okay, great. So good evening, everyone. I'm Sarah from Group Next, and we'll be presenting today on the tale of two smartwatch manufacturers. Our group consists of myself, Ahmad, Zoel, Emma, and Nada. Next. So on today's agenda, we'll first be overviewing the two smartwatch manufacturers, followed by a comparison of the manufacturers in terms of 5 different sections of their, whether or not they have dust-free zones, documentation on the various assembly tasks, the anti-static bands, finger gloves, as well as the presence of OEM relationship. And finally, we'll conclude with an overall evaluation and recommendation. Next. So to start off, I'll be giving an overview of Shenzhen Motor Electronics. They were established in the year 2009. They currently have 300 over employees, 5 assembly lines with 60 over workers per line, 4,000 units of daily production capacity, and their factory site is about 4,000 square meters wide. Their products consist of kids' GPS smartwatches, health GPS smartwatch, GPS tracker, smart bracelet, set-top box, and interestingly, we went on their website and they currently ventured into medical products in light of the pandemic. The market consists of 50% overseas and 50% domestic, and they exist both online and offline channels. Their workers work 10-hour shifts, and the company is on 24-hour operation. Their certifications include CE, ROHS, ISO, CTPAT, BSCI, RED, and REACH. I'll now pass it on to Ami to continue on with KingSmart.
All right, let me just explain about the KingSmart. Here we can see the container of Moto, which is KingSmart. So give it up for KingSmart. They've been around since 2014, which is relatively younger. They also sell smartwatch, sports bracelet, and TLOS device, minus the set-top boxes, but they have VR 3D glasses, which is interesting. And they have managed to establish 4 assembly lines, but not as big, as you can tell from the production quantity, which is only 1,000 units of daily production. And its recency is also reflected in the few certifications received, which is just only 2. It's CE and ROHS. As far as the market percentage is 30% overseas and 70% domestic. Right, moving on to the next slide. Now that we've known the data, it's time to compare their quality standards in terms of manufacturing. And you want to look for factories that have these certain characteristics. And by that, I'm going to pass it to Nada.
Okay. Hello. Okay, so I'm Nada, and today I'm going to be talking about the dust-free zones. Now, as we remember, that the doctor explained that the dust-free zones are actually a way to pull all the dust particles. It's like a room where they pull all the dust particles out of you, and then you enter the completely closed area. So why are these dust-free zones so important? Because small particles can adversely affect manufacturing, especially when it comes to the electronic industry, which is the smartwatch industry. So now the next slide. So now we're going to look at Moto. So if you can see that Moto, if you can see from the video provided, that they actually in their assembly, they have open windows. So this will allow dust particles to enter. But also we have, on the other hand, KingSmart. They also have another issue whereby they take the smartwatches and test the Bluetooth inside the administration area. That means they're moving it from their intended assembly line, whereby it's less contaminated with dust, into the administration area. So I want to ask the class a question. In your opinion, what do you think is worse? Having open windows or having or transporting watches from one area to another? So I guess thumbs up if you think Moto is worse with open windows, and then use your hand if you think that KingSmart is worse. Okay, so I mean, it's up to discussion, and it needs scientific evidence for us to see which is worse. Okay, next.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Emma, and from now on, I'll talk about the documentation of each assembly part. So as you can see, Moto has manualized and documented instructions for each part of assembly tasks with a clear photo of the product. On the other hand, it seems that KingSmart doesn't have a documented manual for each task. Then why is the documentation of the various assembly tasks important? First, documentation can reduce the risk of defect in a certain part of assembly line, which can affect the whole process and final product. Second, it can also minimize the potential loss or problems deriving from when new employees come in or any changes of human resources happen. Third, documentation also can support employees to understand the whole process as well as their own responsible parts, which can consequently be helpful for the better productivity. And indeed, Moto also learned the documentation system from Sharp, which is more developed Japanese company, and Moto benchmarked it for better production process. For the next comparison part, let me pass it to Ahmed.
All right. Okay, moving on to anti-static wristband. As you can see, it's necessary to be worn by every soldering workers in order to dampen the electrostatic discharge. Which one do you think has that? Can I see thumbs for Moto and hands for KingSmart? Okay, next slide. Actually, congrats for either choice because both factories apparently have the devices worn in their hands. It's just the type is different, where Moto is wearing the a wireless one, whereas the KingSmart is still using the cord one. In the KingSmart video, you can see the device is hanging. It's just the spare one. Okay, it's just the end of my part. So moving on.
Hi guys, this is Zoe. Oh, sorry. Oh my God.
Okay, so now my part, I'll be discussing about the finger gloves. So finger gloves are actually really important in the assembly line process as it helps to avoid moisture during the assembly process and also for extra protection to ensure that they don't get injured or anything. So interestingly, what can you guys notice about both the factories as they are assembling the products in terms of like when they're touching the products and stuff? Do you guys notice anything? Yes? In terms of whether they're wearing gloves?
They're not wearing any gloves.
Yeah, exactly. They're not wearing any gloves. So next slide. Yeah, so both the factories do not have any finger gloves. And this is very important as having finger gloves lessens the risk of injury when handling products. And it also avoids leaving fingerprints on the products, especially on the display screens, which evidently both the factories do not have. I'll now pass it on to Zoal to compare the presence of OEM relationship.
Okay, now it's my turn. Having a supplier with an OEM relationship is very important to international buyers because it does play a role in the quality and the processes of the factory. Now, by looking at these product display shelves, which one do you think is an OEM manufacturer? Can I see a thumbs up for Moto and a clap reaction for KingSmart? Anyone? Okay, I see a mixture of, no, I see more clap reactions, but the answer is actually Moto, the one on the left. If you notice, they don't only manufacture smartwatches, but set-top box is gonna be the set-top box for TVs as well. This is because they started off by manufacturing those products in partnership with Sharp, which has given them a lot of learning opportunities in terms of quality control and operating processes. Oh, and documentation as well, which has been mentioned by Emma earlier. Now, the big question for you is, which supplier would you buy from? Maybe let's have 10 seconds to type out in the chat box because we would really want to know like what you guys think before we review the answer later on. Should we do a countdown? Ready, get set, go.
10, 9, 8,
Respond.
7.
I can't see the chat box, sorry, so I need Sarah to be my moderator.
Okay. Mostly
5,
Yeah,
Moto.
mostly
4,
Moto.
There's one KingSmart.
Moto.
Yeah, one KingSmart from that.
Majority
Alright,
is
cool.
Moto.
But we will review the answer in the later part.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on. We will explain about the positive points that we notice among both the suppliers and Nada?
No, actually, it's me.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah, so thanks for your response, everyone. And before we finalize our, overall conclusion, we'd like to evaluate overly for those two companies. So let me start with the positives. So in common, firstly, both companies have independent raw materials inspection room with dedicated employees only for the inspection, even though we didn't really deal with it on our comparison part. And secondly, both companies have quality testing process at the end of the assembly line as well. And in terms of motto, documentation of each task at the assembly line was a prominent positive point, especially in that they benchmarked it from the advanced company. And also high daily production capacity as SME and compared to KingSmart was also a motto's strength. Lastly, not only in terms of production, but also in terms of working conditions for soldering workers, such as wireless anti-static band, temperature control, fans, etc., can be also a positive point of motto. On the other hand, KingSmart asks employees to wear hair caps, gowns, and indoor shoes for the purpose of anti-dust, and it is considered as a positive point for their production process, even though they don't have a separated dust-free zone itself. So this was about the positives for both and each company. And for the negatives, let me pass it to Zoel.
Yeah, of course, there were also some possible improvement points for both the suppliers. For instance, the evidence of a dust-free environment as well as gloves was not apparent in the assembly operations in both the factories. But like what was presented by Nada earlier, KingSmart has done even more harm to their smartwatches by shifting a small batch of it out of the designated testing area to the non-production areas in the factory. As for Moto, they might need to take note of the build-up of inventory boxes along their assembly line because it might affect the production speed, especially when materials are not being properly stored or organized. And moving on, I will pass it back to Nada.
Okay, so now I'm going to talk about what actually surprised us when looking at Moto and KingSmart. So both of them had actually very long-lasting and good quality batteries compared, even when we compare them to large MNCs, they're doing just as well. And so we would see, however, Moto did have a bit of an upper hand on the battery section. And then we have, for Moto itself, the fact that it started off as a TV manufacturing decoder, then it moved on to smartwatches really impressed us, and its ability to move in a very positive way and be very successful at it. And also, they have short setting time for new different orders, which is only 30 minutes, which is very interesting. So, but also KingSmart impressed us in a lot of ways, especially that it's a startup whereby the creator or the entrepreneur, he was an ex-designer. So he had absolutely no experience in production, and as such, we can as such see that we can all be inspired that yes, it is possible for anyone, even if you have no background in production, that yes, you can start your own company, and if you're really passionate about something, you can actually make it work. And they actually have they're producing smartwatches and selling them at the quarter of the price of what we see in a lot of well-known brands. So well-known brands obviously use economies of scale. KingSmart cannot use the same economies of scale, yet they are successful and they already have 4 production lines. Okay, I'm going to pass it on to Ahmed for the recommendation.
Yeah, as far as the recommendations, we've gathered 4 recommendations so far. And the first one is the minor details such as wearing gloves is overlooked by both factories, as you can see from the previous videos. And the second one is there's a lack of availability of dust-free zones in both factories, as you can see. In the previous video where someone's like transferring smartwatches between the room, and it's a big no. The third one, KingSmart needs to improve on OEM relationships. And finally, KingSmart further needs legitimate documentation representing procedural assembly tasks.
All right, so drum roll. Our answer is Motto. So we came to the conclusion that Motto is the better company compared to KingSmart, as if you notice among the 5 different sections, Motto had more smiley faces compared to KingSmart, especially in terms of their documentation and the presence of OEM relationship. And interestingly, we actually tried to find KingSmart on Google and we couldn't find their official website. So we're not sure whether they've either stopped operations or they've changed their name. But yeah, that's something to think about, as Motto is still around, but we're not sure whether KingSmart is still in operation. So yeah, that will be all for us. Thank you for participating.
Okay, so you better ask for questions and.
Oh yes, any questions?
Hello, good evening. I would like to just ask, why do you think that transporting smartwatch from one area to the other is such a big issue? Isn't it like quite easy when you are actually partnering with them? You could have just like tell them, or is there any other like factors that affect them? Why do they have to transport that watch from one place to the other?
I think the question here is that me as a buyer, I may not have the same knowledge that the supplier should have about transporting. So if I'm someone who's buying for my shop, I have no idea about the manufacturing process. So how would I know that a dust-free zone is actually mandatory and that transporting smartwatches from one area to another is going to affect them? So for me, I really think that it's their job to know, and it's their job to produce the product in a way that is the most effective and in a way that it's not going to get ruined or damaged. But me as a buyer, I may or may not know.
Was that your question?
Yeah, I mean yeah, I was just like wondering, like what makes what's it called, KingSmart? Why do they not change like that methodology of like transporting? Is there any other?
No, actually for them, they said that they want to bring it to a separate place because they didn't want the Bluetooth.
It has to do with the radio
connection
interference.
Interference, yeah.
It was interfering. It's in the same room. The Bluetooth connection will like interfere, so they have to go outside of the assembly line to not get any interference. Yeah.
So they already have like an actual testing like room for the watches. Just that this is one of the just a small batch of the watches that actually took out of the testing area to another place to test because of the Bluetooth interference.
Okay.
You mentioned that the testing for the Bluetooth, this is my first inquiry is basically for the testing of the Bluetooth, it's after they finished assembling the watch, right? Or, yeah. So then isn't it considerably better, okay for them to take it out of the room, whereas for Moto, their windows are there, which is more chances of dust getting in while assembly because of the wind and stuff. The windows are open. In the video, the windows are open as well. So there's more risk to the watches with that than compared to KingSmart taking it out after assembly, right? After like setting it up just to test the Bluetooth. So there's more chances of the watches getting damaged for Moto than KingSmart.
I think. Oh, do you want to know?
As I'm asking you, isn't that more distinct?
I think, as I said, I also said that this is up actually for discussion. So as I mentioned in my slide, that this is up for discussion, but we did choose King, because we did choose Moto and as the better, as all around better. However, the point in the dust-free zones is still up for discussion. So what needs to be done is further research on which actually case has the more damage on the smartwatches.
Actually, we actually went to their current website right now, and their website now says that they do have a dust-free zone. I mean, as in Moto does have a dust-free zone, but that's not something that we are very sure of, as we have no evidence. But according to like the pictures and stuff on their official website, it shows that their factory looks a lot cleaner than when Dr. Neil went to visit, like a lot cleaner, and they have dust-free zones compared to when Dr. Neil went to visit a few years ago. But yeah, we have no proof that they really do have dust-free zones.
All right.
I think there was another part of the watches when they were brought out, they weren't separated. They were all bunched up together. And so
yes. Yeah.
It's also how they were carrying them from room to room.
Mm.
It's as if, oh, we can just stack them up next to each other and
yeah, it was just on a tray all together.
Yeah, and very little protection at all. The actual tray is plastic at the bottom. It should be foam. There should be foam between each product. You just got to minimize any chances of scratching too. But it's interesting if you, yeah, okay. Just add to that. It may not have been apparent in the video. Any other final questions, everyone? I've got a question about the mask. What's the deal with the mask and which factory is doing that now?
Oh, Moto. You mean?
Yes.
Medical products, right?
Yes, correct.
Yes, Moto's currently, I went on their website and I found that they are currently also producing medical products.
Oh, that's amazing. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Assuming that, then they would have FDA approval to do that. In order to get FDA approval, you definitely have to have a dust-free zone. So things may have changed because of that. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other final points, class? Okay. We have, so we have our first group successfully finished their presentation. How do you feel? No comment. What?
How do we feel?
Yes.
Oh, great. Yay, Meta.
Oh, great. Energy. We need more energy online. This is very important. This is going to be around for next year onwards. So we've got to get used to presenting with that higher energy online. It's so important, everyone. So just keep a note on that. And I think what I liked about your presentation is you brought out some extra information. It wasn't in the videos that you went online. So you did a little bit extra than what was apparent in the videos. And this just re-emphasized the point we were making last week about the whole idea of supply chain problems begin with the factory. They don't start with the logistics or the transporter. Like one of the themes you were talking about tonight, group, and you could have, you did emphasize it pretty well about the dust, but also the other things that, you've got dust, moisture, and separation. Those three things affect the goods from the start of assembly right through till they're in the store in the other country they're in. So, a big thing when you put them onto a ship is the moisture. That's assuming that everything's sealed in and there's no dust inside the sealed packaging of each product. So you just can't afford to have any dust inside. And you mentioned no gloves on the fingers, right? Well, you could have made a little bit more emphasis on, well, why does that matter? Well, you know, because our hands expel moisture, and then a little bit of moisture gets onto the product, inside, outside, doesn't matter, while it's open, and then that attracts dust, because moisture always attracts dust. If there's no moisture, dust comes and goes. A moisture, dust comes and stays. So, you know, it all gets back to keeping the whole product clean during the assembly process, and separation, which was evidenced by when they were taken into another room. So, you know, well done on your first presentation, group. Kick that off. It's always hard to be the first, a little bit over time. I noticed that. But what was nice was you rotated around the presenters. You didn't just stay with one presenter. Rotated around and you brought some energy to the table. And I like the extra information you got outside of the video. So well done there. Excellent. Okay. Let's move on to where's our next group? Hello, everyone.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
It's G3, is it?
Yes.
Okay, put your hand up where G3 is so we know we can see you. 1, 2, 3, 4. Just 4 of you?
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. So how are you feeling? How's your energy level?
We're good. We're okay.
By the way, did you follow my advice in my videos about energy levels? That is, you probably didn't do it in the video, but one thing I do before a presentation is I'll go for a walk where I hold my breath for 50 steps. And what it does is it takes your mind off any worries you have, because you've got to focus on your heartbeat and the air that's in your lungs, because you're not allowed to take a breath and you've got to take 50 steps. Have you ever thought of doing that?
No.
You should try that. That will it gets your heart beating, and heart beating faster is more energy. Okay, very important. More energy. Okay, all right. I tell students that if you ever have a boring lecture, if you're in the lecture and you're boring, there's a great multitasking effort you can do. And that is you hold your breath for as long as you can 10 times. And that's nearly equivalent as going for a 3-kilometer run. And so then you're not wasting time if the lecture is boring. Maybe I shouldn't be telling you this, because maybe I see some of you holding your breath. Then that might be a signal. Okay, so enough of my intermission. And G3, do you feel, how's your energy now?
Good.
We're good.
Okay, good. All right. So are you using any software apps that the class need to know about?
No, just the reactions. Good.
Chat room, and what else?
Yeah, just the reactions on Zoom.
Okay, the reactions on Zoom. And are you using chat room?
Yeah, both are fine.
Okay, so we're just going to make sure the whole class is ready, so they're instant. There's no latency in the reaction. When you ask a question, we expect all the whole class to respond. Either they don't know or they do know, and then react in the way they are expected. All right, so we'll start the clock in 30 seconds if you're ready.
Okay.
And you're doing the second one. You're working the tail of 2 speaker factories, is that right?
Headphones. Yep.
Yes.
Wow. Amazing. Okay, I'll leave it to you to start off with. And so this is GA team, correct? Or G3?
G3.
G3, okay. Welcome, and please go ahead.
Okay.
Offlang and Ione, not the tail of the 2 speaker factories. That's next week. Okay, thank you.
Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our presentation where we analyze the tale of two headphone factories, which is WELDING versus AONI. Our group consists of myself, Alifia, Ashley, and Celine. So without further ado, let us proceed to compare the two companies. Next slide. Yeah, next. So before going into in-depth comparisons, we would like to share some observations with the class during the pre-factory visit stage. And firstly, we noticed that AONI is superior to WELDING in terms of product quality. In this context, WELDING headphones are only equipped with entry-level features and lower build quality, whereas AONI headphones have enhanced sound quality which come from better wireless connectivity and deeper bass. Next, we also observed that AONI has relevant quality management certifications, whereas we couldn't identify this while watching the videos for WELDING. And finally, we noticed AONI has another advantage, which is in the form of existing relationships with established brands, and among these include Samsung, LG, and Lenovo. AONI is regularly involved in OEM and ODM businesses with these large companies, and therefore this may prove to be a good sign to instill confidence in potential buyers even before visiting the company. And now I will pass the time on to my colleagues to make further in-depth comparisons to some observations we have while watching some videos of Dr. New visiting the company.
Hi, I'm Alifia, and I will continue in discussing the safety measures that the companies have in their factories. Next. So, can't be loaded.
Hold on. Sorry, guys.
Okay, so as you can see in the first video, people in offline, including the workers and visitors, can just enter the room without the need of any protective clothing. Meanwhile, in AONI, they actually have to use lab coat or disposable gown, even hair caps to some workers. As you can see, the guy on the left are wearing them. So, and another point is that they also have to use some shoe covers. Next. Another difference is that offline uses a normal door in their factory. As for AONI, people have to actually pass through an air shower. So this is common in electronic industry as the SMT machines and even assembly lines tend to be in a clean room behind this kind of air shower that utilizes high pressure and filtered air to remove dust, lint, or other contaminants from people or objects that are going to pass through. So proper air showers usually come with ISO classified transition vestibule like this one here for AONI to ensure the cleanliness of the room on the other side. And as in my teammate's slide before, it says that AONI actually has this ISO certification for this kind of thing. Next. So from these differences in factory entrance, we can already have various effects. We can already see various effects on the machines, products, and workers. As you saw before, the air showers which gated the entrance can prevent the inflow of dust from the outdoors. And this in turn can prevent the buildup of dust, which would be bad for your machines as it may cause performance issues. The internal components of your machines can have the dust to clog their air filters or even have some damage to certain machine parts. So you would want to avoid that in the long run since the maintenance cost might begin to rise and the downtime due to such incidents could lead to further losses in the production. So this is definitely something worth considering. And aside from that, dust or any contaminants could also affect the quality of goods produced. And if dust starts building up on higher levels in your factory, your products could be at constant risk, especially to some electronic industry which uses nanotechnology or ultra fine particulate processing, which are common And yeah, not only the environments can be kept from contaminants, but also the workers can also protect themselves from the exposure. As if you refer to the first slide before, I mentioned that they used protective clothing before entering. So yeah, they can protect themselves from the exposure of any hazardous chemicals or processes in the factory. And actually this will be discussed later on by my teammates. I will pass the floor to Celine.
All right, thank you, Ify. So before I talk about the quality control, I have to mention that AONI and Ovling's operation are different, in which AONI actually produces their materials on their own, while Ovling actually bought all the materials from outside suppliers and assemble it in their factory. And as such, AONI's process of production is much longer than Ovling. So this will relate to their checkpoints for quality control. First, you see here, this is AONI. They have a detailed production workflow that consists of several quality control checkpoints put in place. As you can see there are three production flow boards for 3 different products. And I'll show you the clear view. Okay, in the board, notice that there are red boxes in between the process of production. So these red boxes are the crucial checkpoints which determine whether or not their products conform to the criteria set. For instance, if a certain item does not meet up the standards given, it would then be rejected back to the previous stage to be rectified, whereas the ones that pass would move along to the next stage of the production process. So the whole idea of this process is there to minimize flaws or production defects, which can better ensure product standards. And here, unlike AONI, the only checking point for Ovling is positioned at the end of the assembly line. So what you see here is the worker testing the functionality of the final product, like the voice or audio, memory card, battery, and other features of that headphone model. And in addition to that, since Ovling opt to purchase materials from outside suppliers, they should have a material inspection before they begin assembling, right? But you see the boxes there, so those are boxes for receiving materials, and these are not inspected before the assembly process begins. So this shows that Ovling lacks proper quality control in contrast with AONI. And next, I want to talk about separation. So the practice of proper separation is very critical in the manufacturing process, and components have to be handled gently to keep them safe from scratches, dust, or other functional problems. And one of the most frequently seen electronic failure modes in factories is actually the circuit boards, the PCB. So these complex devices require precise manufacturing and proper handling to operate at their peak. Now, let me ask you guys, which factory do you think actually practice proper separation? If you think it's Ovling, can you give a thumbs up? But if you think it's AONI, you can give a clap. Okay, most of you actually give a clap. I guess it's pretty obvious. Hold on. So you can see there on top, factory workers in Ovling have been stacking these electrical components on top of one another. So the rough handling of these components may actually damage and prevent the PCB boards from performing effectively. So this is in contrast with the factory at the bottom, AONI, whereby the electrical components are handled systematically by properly separating them into different compartments and labeling it. So this is really a cause of concern for Ovling. And moving on to the documentation of defects. So both factories in Ovling and AONI practices the use of a logbook to record the types and number of defects encountered during the production. But the interesting point is whether or not the recording was done appropriately to be relied on. So if you notice from the video on top, the logbook for Ovling actually shows 3 defects recorded at 10 until 11, but in the basket there are actually 4 defects, 4 headphones in the basket. So the reconciliation between the problem and the defects does not seem to match in Ovling, which then shows that the documentation was not done properly. And this clearly contrasts with the detailed documentation in AONI. So AONI has several categories for defects such as scratch, power button issues, LED functionality issues, and etc. So detailed categorization of these defects is also very important so that they can detect the source of the problem easily and therefore improve the production process to reduce those defects from reoccurring in the future. And altogether, you can see that the separation issues in off-length have become the source of their problem. So the defects recorded in off-length's logbook is actually a functionality problem, which is a problem in the circuit board and power button, which Professor Neil is actually holding in the video. So you can see how obvious it is that by stacking up the electronics that way can lead to a major problem in the end. Also note that these components came from an outside supplier. So this reminds us again on the importance of receiving goods inspection, because without this, you would not know whether the quality of the materials actually met the standard criteria. And next, I'll pass on to my teammate Ashley to compare the working conditions in both factories.
Okay. Thank you, Celine. So aside from the differences in terms of the safety measures and quality control implemented, differences in the working conditions between both factories could also be spotted. Next. Okay, so as you can see in the video, the usage of anti-static wrist wraps in AONI factory could be observed during the QC inspection process, which is in contrast with the factory in Ovlang, whereby the use of anti-static wrist wraps could not be seen. So these anti-static bands are actually very important because it's used to prevent damage to electrical components or leakage of electrical charges, which could actually put the lives of the workers at risk. That being said, AONI that has ensured the use of anti-static wrist wraps shows that the well-being of their workers is actually being taken care of. Next. So another point to be mentioned would be the difference in quality of the welding ventilation provided in both factories. For processes such as welding and soldering, the primary purpose of ventilation is to remove air contaminants from the workers' breathing zone. So it's very important to adequately protect workers from the exposure of air contaminant released during the soldering process. However, as you can see in the video, the factory workers in Ovlang are each provided with only a fan as a protection, which might not be enough as means of worker protection, and it might further worsen the health or impact the workers' health negatively. However, in factory workers in AONI, on the other hand, are each provided with a local exhaust ventilation in the form of a movable hood, which is the most preferred and desirable method of removing welding fumes and gases. Okay, next. And the difference in sitting arrangement between both factories will be the last point I would like to point out. So as you can see, the workers in factory A seems to have a rather cramped and unorganized workstation with boxes stacked around them, which may not be a desirable work environment. But for workers in factory B seem to have a more preferable workstation layout as they have their own individual workspace. So because of the bigger workspace, employees in factory B, which is AONI, may be able to perform longer hours of duty in a more comfortable state. So I would like to ask the class, so which workstation would you guys prefer? The top one, which is Ovlang factory, which has a rather cramped and unorganized workspace, or AONI factory that provides individual workspace? Thumbs up for the Ovlang and clap for AONI. Okay, so I think, okay, many of you would probably prefer factory B, which is AONI. Hence, this shows that it is necessary to provide a good design of workspace in order to maximize the utilization of tools and space, as well as to improve the productivity of workers. So in short, the well-being of the workers should be taken care of by each employer, as it would become one of the key factors or influences in how they carry out their work efficiently and effectively. I will now pass it on to Yi Xiang to conclude our presentation.
Okay, thank you, Ashley. Now I'll give a brief summary for the comparison between these two headphone factories. Next. Okay, so before we review our decision as to which supplier we prefer to source from, we would like to see where the class stands on the overall big picture on Ovlang versus AONI. Therefore, let's have a quick voting session where you may place a thumbs up for Ovlang and hands for AONI. You may refer to the table for your reference. So it's thumbs up for Ovlang and hands for AONI. Okay, I see most of you put AONI, and I think this is pretty straightforward. And to sum up, it is evident that AONI's attention to detail is greater than Ovlang during the whole production and assembly process, despite Ovlang falling short of our comparison. But we have also noticed that Ovlang also caters to both domestic and international markets while watching the videos. And there is a saying, you get what you paid for, and this is quite relevant in today's case. Because Ovlang headphones may be of lower quality, but it is also important to know that they are priced at a range between just 5 to 13 US dollars, which is substantially lower than AONI. But ultimately, if we were to make a choice, our group will still opt for sourcing headphones from AONI, as we have learned to appreciate the importance of suppliers' attention to detail while conducting this assignment. Next. Okay, so thank you everyone for your participation, and now we will have our Q&A session.
Does anyone have any questions?
Hi, I have a question. Can you hear me?
Can you speak louder?
I think I will type on the chat box.
Okay. Okay, so the question is, if AONI's product price increase, would you still go with AONI or change to Ovlang or look for another factory? I would say it depends on the product that you're looking for, because these two products are quite different. As for AONI, they produce high quality products. As for the headphones, they have better bass and better noise cancellation. Whereas for Ovlang, it's just entry level models, and they are priced between, like what I said just now, just 5 US dollars to 13 US dollars, which is very cheap. So it depends on the nature of your business. If your business requires better quality headphones for commercial reasons, then I would say let's go for AONI. But for Ovlang, they also cater to a lot of domestic and international markets. So this proves that there is also a consumer base for them. So for us, we would still go for AONI, but if we're going for low costs for other companies' perspective, then maybe Ovlang would also be a good choice.
I think it also depends on the company's budget. If the price increase for AONI is still within the budget, we'll still go for AONI, but like if it's way too far away from the budget, then maybe we'll like opt for Ovlang too. Did we answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
All right. So I think Dr. New also asked the question, how would you approach sourcing from Ovlang differently from AONI? Give us a moment.
Wait, what was the question again?
It's how would you approach sourcing from Ovlang differently from AONI? It's in the chat box.
Anyone in the class can answer this?
I think I would put I would be putting plenty of clauses because even though as they mentioned that you get what you paid for. I mean, like for offline, you already expect a subpar product, but you have to remember also the operation. I mean, like I think the offline factory, they might not actually have as efficient operation. Your item might be late, or there might be more defects, those kind of thing, documentation. So yeah, I think you will have to have plenty of clauses, plenty more clauses in on the operational part of the production.
Yeah, I agree. I think one thing I can add on is maybe the negotiations will be more rigorous for offline as compared to AONI. Like what you said, we might want to include more specific clauses to ensure quality is not compromised. So I think one aspect that will be different while sourcing from offline compared to AONI would be in the negotiations.
Okay. Any other questions from class?
Hi. Yes, I do have a question. So
Thank you.
I think, yeah, I want to know is like, what's your opinion to what is the most feasible and most easier way for Overland to increase their efficiency and also their competitiveness in terms of when suppliers comparing their factory and other factories?
Is that for the group?
Yes, it's for the group.
Mm.
The most people. Okay, Ashley.
No, I think they could maybe increase more checkpoints to ensure their quality of their products instead of just assigning one checkpoint at the end of their assembly line. Because if you only check it in the end, you might not be able to like make sure that the inside of the product is actually, the quality of the product is actually ensured. So maybe increase more checkpoints.
Yeah, like receiving good inspection. So before they begin assembling, they should like test the receiving goods. Also the separation issues, it's something that they can actually resolve overnight just by putting the PCB boards on like a better container. It can actually improve a lot because the source of their defects are actually from the board, from the circuit board. Anything else?
Okay. We are at the top of the hour. Thank you, G3. Again, you are challenging my limits on the 12-minute rule. So future groups need to be very, very careful on that. I like the presentation. You pulled out ideas that weren't always from the video. So, and also you talked about the workers' welfare. I thought that was very nice. This is increasingly becoming more important, especially if it's a large brand name manufacturer. If you're importing into Europe, they have much more questions on the social environmental responsibility. So yeah, this is good. And I think one of you mentioned about the importance of knowing these differences because of the negotiation opportunities. If you're sourcing from either, the point that actually both, what is really interesting, you get to choose one or the other, AONI or Ovlang, but both of them are profitable. So what does that tell you?
There's a market for it.
There's a market. There's a market for every type of factory. Okay, so it's not like you source from one, you'd never source from the other. It depends on the market. You could probably make more money sourcing headphones from Ovlang than you could sourcing headphones from AONI. you can imagine the Aoni FOB price of their headphones. I don't think you showed it in the video. That's in another video. The video you showed was when I first visited Aoni. They were making the car DVR video controllers that you put on the dashboard of your car. But second time visit was when they were manufacturing the ANC headphones. And I think I mentioned this last week before, their FOB prices between 27 and 38 US dollars each. Like, okay, so if that's FOB, you would never sell those products for less than 100 US dollars when you put it on Amazon USA. 120, anything less than that, you're not going to make any money. You got to understand logistics costs money. You got customs duties, you got insurance, you got many more things that add on to the price. And a general rule of thumb is you take the FOB price and multiply it by 4 to get the final price. And so if you go on Amazon and source ANC headphones and you look at the 120 US dollar upwards, there is a lot of competition. And so you'd have to know your product very, very well if you're going to source from Aoni. Whereas with Ovlang, you can, yeah, that's something for someone who's never done sourcing before. You know, you've got minimum amount of money, a couple of thousand in capital, you just want to try it out, source 500 headphones, 650 US dollar FOB, you know, so you put, yeah.
I feel like offline also would be a good choice for people who wanna, like companies who wanna just give it out as maybe free gifts or something. Events.
I like, that's, yeah, I never thought of that. That's possible too, you know, that's that would be a hit of a party if you were handing out headphones as a gift for attending.
A more high-end free gift maybe.
Well, it's better than a USB, I understand.
Yeah.
No, that's a good thought. You might think about that. That's interesting. Okay, well done. Let's wrap that up. Good first up presentations. Groups coming up, be mindful of, you know, what's the big theme of why you're presenting? What's the big takeaway? So it's very important you remind the audience what is the takeaway. You just spent 12 minutes. In the case of these groups, they went 16 minutes, which is not encouraged. Let me repeat. But you got to remind the class of what is the takeaway. What's the big idea here? You know, with the first one, I'll just finish with this, was what if I would ask you a question you could ask the class and you didn't? So which one of those 5 different things that you were comparing between the 2 factories could you do without? You know, maybe if I could say, okay, you can only have 3 out of those 5, which would you choose? So class, you go away from the break, we come back from the break and you tell us. Remember that, what were those 5 things? Sarah, what was that? Can you remind the class, what were those 5 things you covered?
It was finger gloves, OEM relationship.
Yeah, dust. What else?
Dust-free zones, anti-static wristbands.
Right.
And, oh my gosh, what was the last one?
Documentation.
Yes, and documentation.
Documentation. Okay, there you go, class. If you can only have 3 of those 5 things, which would you choose? Because I can tell you, you go into a lot of factories and you're not going to get all those 5. You're not going to check the boxes on all 5 for most of the factories. Doesn't have to be China. You're going to Vietnam, other places, Southeast Asia. You're still going to have travels. All right. So you as a sourcer, you're never going to get a perfect factory. So which one would you choose? What are you looking at? If you had 3, which of those 3 would you choose? Okay. Have a break. See you back in 8 minutes. Okay. Give the groups a hand. Thank you. Okay, well done. Hello, everyone. I said hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hi, sir.
Thank you.
Hi, sir.
I need to know you're alive, okay? I want to remind you of one thing. Let's just share screen, whiteboard. Okay. Some of you at the beginning of this course, I gave you an opportunity to join Bronze in Udemy, right? Remember that? If you haven't joined, then this is the code for joining for free, and then you can be in there for life, okay? It's there for the rest of your life, so it costs you nothing. I didn't give you an opportunity to join the silver, so there's the silver one, MGM5698S. These two codes expire in 72 hours. Okay? So I suggest you do that tonight. If most of you are in bronze, join silver. If you haven't joined bronze, missed out, you have the last chance to join bronze. Okay? So why would you want to join this Udemy? Actually, you don't have to, but there are several videos that I have put in YouTube. So several videos of me, and there's several videos of Mike, my friend. And at the end of these videos, there are MCQ questions. Did you know that? Hello? Did you know that? There are MCQ questions. And guess what is happening in week 8, which is the week after midterm break?
Quiz.
There is a MCQ quiz. Okay. So is there any similarity between these MCQ questions and these MCQ questions? Yes. Okay. In this quiz, there's going to be 30 questions. About 15 of the questions in here are very similar to 15 in this 30 MCQ quiz. Okay. Do you get what I'm getting at? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Like, don't you want to know what the quiz is going to be about or what they're like? Well, that's why you join Udemy, you watch the video and you can take the quiz. Now, I'm not saying you watch every video, but I think by now you've seen the videos that I have posted, and you'll match them in Udemy and you'll see the quiz at the end of the video. So there'll be half of the quiz questions are coming from the Udemy course. Okay. So if you want to help, that's why you joined the Udemy, all right? And I gave you, if you look at the PowerPoint slide that I shared with you last week in Moodle, that is how do you score well? I think I listed all of the videos in Udemy from which the quiz may be taken from. Am I right?
Yes.
I did do that. All right. So does that mean you have to watch the video to do the quiz? No, you can skip the video and do the quiz in Udemy instead. All right. That's fine. Look, either way you do it, you're going to learn something. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I'm here to help you. So let's, and then there's other 15 that you won't know about. So at least this will give you some practice. Okay. Some practice. All right, so let's go on the whiteboard. Can we make another one? Let me just save that. Whiteboard saved. Okay, so now let's just, now what, can I do another one? Eraser, startup, text, draw. I've saved that. Has everyone got the code for Udemy, yes or no?
Yes.
Can you put it in chat room? Can someone? That's MGM5698 for bronze, MGM5698S for silver. Okay. All right. So we're going to clear that, clear all drawings. All right. One more thing. Okay. Let's make it clear here. So I don't think you're getting it. I don't think you're getting this yet. All right. I need a show of hands when you get this. All right. What is this?
Factory.
What is this?
Manufacturer.
It's a factory, right? Okay. All right. Now, over here, we have one type of buyer, and over here, we have another type of buyer. Okay. Which one is the big buyer?
The bottom one.
One, good, you're quick. So what are the big buyers doing? This is what you're going to learn later in the semester. What the big buyers are doing is they do this.
Investigate.
What is this? What is this? Come on.
Magnifying glass.
Is that a magnifying
It's a magnifying glass. Okay. And what's the magnifying glass do?
Inquire.
It focuses on the factory.
Oh.
Right? What do the small buyers do? What do most small buyers do? Hello? Have a guess.
Outsourcing?
They don't do that. They don't do that at all. Class, please pay attention. Next 5 minutes. This is big. All right? Small buyers don't do it. Why don't small buyers do what the big buyers do? Isn't it like if big buyers are doing it, why don't small buyers do it? Like, why don't they do it? Come on.
It's too costly.
All right. Number one, it costs money. What else?
Maybe the order isn't very big.
Expertise. What else?
Maybe the order isn't very big.
Yeah, order is not that big.
Okay, small order. What? That doesn't matter. Maybe the risk is lower. I don't know. What else? Come on.
They're not thinking about long-term relationship.
Okay. Yeah, they think short term, huh? Okay. All right. All right. So, which of these can be changed overnight?
Short term, the relationship.
Yeah, that can be changed. All right, that can be changed. All right. Dollars, yeah, maybe go get a loan. But what about this one here? Expertise. If they don't have expertise, that means even if they go to the factory, they won't know what to do, right? They don't have the confidence, right? Yes or no?
Yes.
They don't have the confidence. Just like you, all of you, 4 weeks ago. Do you think, were you in this position of this person or this person here? Where are you?
That one at the top.
You're at the top. You're here, right? Okay. What do you think I've been doing the last 2 weeks? Am I helping on 1, 2, 3, or 4?
2.
I'm helping you here. All right. You're getting more confidence now because you see in the factory. Some of you may be bored by it, but this is critical. This is what we're doing in this course. Okay. especially the first 1/3 of the course, because you get more confidence, then it's more likely you'll go to the factory and start to look for things, and you can do things that the big buyers do. Okay, so I just want to remind you why you're learning what you're learning. Okay, all right, save that. Thank you. All right, whiteboard saved. So let's okay, let me stop share for a moment. Okay, we're back. Now, let's move on to what we need to do tonight. Just want to remind you why you're learning what you're learning. If you know why, then you have more power, you have more motivation. It's nothing worse than a lecturer saying this is good for you and you don't know why. And the words just go in one ear and out the other ear. Okay. So let's have a look. 5A. What to do if things go wrong. I love this. Let me just share. Okay. Zoom. We love our Zoom, don't we? Zoom reported earnings last night and its stock's up about 10% tonight on New York stock market. Amazing. Just because of what we're doing, we're all using Zoom. Okay, so I'm just going to share the screen. And remember, we're here for the little guy. We're here for the little person. And by the way, even if you join a procurement team, you join a multinational, in a procurement team, everything we're doing about, you know, your specifics of a factory makes you a much better manager if you have to work in a procurement team. So this is very, very critical. Can everyone see this? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Latency. Remember latency. All right. So what we got here, this is where are we here, and it's when to source, where to source, how to source. Negotiation was last week, and now we're moving. We've got the 3-circle control framework, contracting and due diligence, and now we're moving on to the area of scams. So notice that we moved from in week 3 where we looked at supply challenges, but now we're looking at operational risk management. And so we started that last week. The groups, you are presenting your factory visits, you're doing factory comparisons. Until you start to see differences, the problems, then that's where you start to understand operational risk management. So what are we doing tonight? Contracting and governance mechanisms. Yes, we are looking at the second we're looking at the second circle of the 3-circle control framework, documentation. I'm going to go very quickly through this, and that is, it's very important that you document your expectations. And what is very important here is that we've got the purchase order, due diligence audits, intellectual property warranties, ADR clauses. There are many things to think about here. And of course, you can outsource it to a lawyer who will help get things in order. We know that, but let me just introduce this, but we're going to skip over that. MB Video 12, that is in Udemy, so you can watch that, and that's on intellectual property. We're going to come back to that in week 7. That is the week after next, when we look at startups and IoTs, because the protection of intellectual property is much more critical when we're talking about IoT startups, that is Internet of Things startups. Okay, and you know, there's a lot of issues around intellectual property, and I want to save that part and save that for week 7, where we spend a little bit more time on how startups are how are they protecting their intellectual property? Like it's not an interesting question to say, well, how does Apple do it? Like, they've got a ton of lawyers to do that, right? They've got tons of money. You can protect anything. Not every company is Apple, right? And it's the startups that have a new idea. They have a new product. They are tweaking a new thing. They are most exposed to intellectual property theft. And so that's why we will go into this in just a little bit more detail, not next week, but the week after. Permit me to do that. Is that okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Good, good, good. Okay. All right. Now, NO video number 22, what to do when things go wrong. Ah, wow. Remember, NO video 22, that's in Udemy again. That's the number in Udemy. Number 22, I think that's in silver. But then you can see the multiple choice questions behind that as a review. Okay. This is not just China. This can be any developing economy. That is, there's a power outage, or something happened with the tooling, or there was a sub-supplier problem. These things happen. It's not that a supplier is negligent. It's not that suppliers are that dumb and they leave you out on the lurch and mistreat you in that way. Sometimes there are things out of their control. All right. So it's when we say what to do when things go wrong, we don't just are asking the question, well, what to do when suppliers do the wrong thing. All right. Suppliers try to do the right thing, but sometimes things are out of their control and then things go wrong. Okay, so I'm not beating up on the suppliers yet. Okay. All right, here are different things that can go wrong. It can be a scam. There can be a problem with payment. That is, you pay to the wrong person. You pay to a factory. You think you're paying to a factory, but it turns out to be a scam. There might be poor quality, misdelivery, intellectual property problem. We're going to talk about that in 2 weeks' time. And there could be a problem with you as importer of record, and a problem of wrong jurisdiction. That is, the contract, if you were to take to court, a supplier to court, and if the jurisdiction is in USA, then you really cannot get a judgment heard in China, because the contract says that any problem needs to be adjudicated by a court in USA. So you go to USA, you get a judgment against the supplier. Well, then the system in the USA doesn't have any power to penalize the supplier because the supplier is not in USA. So a lot of mistakes that buyers make is they think that having the jurisdiction in USA is better than China. You've got to have the jurisdiction in the same, basically similar to a close province of where the supplier's factory is. No ADR clause, talk very briefly about that. So, you know, these are all things that can go wrong. And then ideally, when it comes to contracting, it's best to try and write the contract with these problems occurring. So thinking about, okay, is there anything that we can write into the contract that can sort of minimize the problems that any of these factors can occur, that can cause in the product being delivered and the product being sold. Okay, here's probably what you need to know when it comes to contracts and payments. Okay, number one, a signed and chopped contract that clearly defines what is acceptable level of quality. So you need to be very, very clear about, okay, and that's the purchase order basically. It represents the contract, you get it chopped, but you make it very, very clear in the purchase order, this is what the acceptable level of quality should be. Now, next week, we're going to look at acceptable levels of quality, and you're going to do a calculation, and there'll be calculations you have to do in the quiz. Wow, exciting. Yes, that's the second time I've mentioned the quiz tonight. Okay, next, contract. Bilingual. Well, Megla talked about India. Maybe you don't need to have bilingual, just it's enough to have English contract in India. But in China, you need to be bilingual. In Vietnam, it needs to be bilingual. And so it really depends on the country, but a lot of Asian economies, developing economies, it has to be bilingual. Payment linked to performance. We will talk about 30% upfront. Why? Because the supplier has to buy materials. 40% when the goods are inspected at the end or they are taken to the port, and 30% when the goods arrive in your country. But a lot of suppliers don't like that. They prefer to have 30-70. That is, they want to get paid as soon by 100% by the time their goods get to the port in China. And so that, you know, that's a power negotiation thing. If you don't have much power, you're going to have to accept 30-70. That's okay. State the lead times and penalties in advance, but must be reasonable. For example, you might put in the contract that, you know, there'll be a 3% discount for every day late, or the supplier will expedite any late shipment by FedEx. And no supplier will want to do that because it's so expensive. And you make that very clear in the contract, and it's more likely you'll get them to pay attention to shipping on time. Plan for non-conforming goods, defects to be reshipped by the supplier. That is, maybe you tell the supplier, look, we understand that 1 or 2% of your goods will be defective, even beyond what my QC inspection says. Can you just add in 1 or 2 more %? So if I order 1,000, can you ship for me 1,015 items? Because maybe there's 10 or 15 that don't work, then I'm not going to bother you, Mr. Supplier, when I find out that they don't work in my country. Some suppliers do that. You can do that. That's part of negotiation. Clarify the ownership of tooling. This is a very interesting one because tooling is very expensive. It's not unusual for tooling for a new product. Maybe you're making something like this, or maybe you're making a new phone case or something special, or maybe a tablet like this. The tooling, or this is what I bought 2 days ago. This is a device that you can fold up and put my tablet on. See that? Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? And that costs it cost me about 70 ringgit. So the supplier could make this and you could ship this FOB for maybe 10 ringgit. And what's important here is that the tooling to make this, well, this is metal, may cost 30,000 yuan. It may cost 40, 50,000 yuan. What are we talking about? It could be 100,000 ringgit or more for the tooling alone to make something like that. So, because you're designing something new, all right. So it's very important that you're sinking a lot of money into tooling. It's very important that you clarify the ownership. Often suppliers will say, oh, don't worry about the tooling. We will look after it for you. But the problem is the supplier keeps the tooling and then they can make your product secretly and you don't know. They make 10,000 for you, but then they make 10,000 for themselves and then they sell it out the back door without you knowing. So that's very important. Never let the supplier own the tooling if it's a tweaked product. Appropriate legal jurisdiction, I told you about that. A written QC plan is integrated into the contract. In other words, you make it very clear in the contract that the QC inspection will take place midway or at the end or at different quality gates at the time when the goods go to shipment. And it's very clear in the contract when the QC inspector is allowed to roll up. So then they have full power when they arrive at the factory. Okay, next, and this is very, very important, that the seller named in the contract matches the receiver of the payment. Same name on the contract, bank account, and factory gate. Clear paper trail showing proof of payment. Leverage, leverage. Face, it's relevant in many Asian cultures, not just China. What do we mean by face? It may be that you sign the contract with the supplier in front of a group of people, like a celebration, and then the supplier is more likely, less likely to renege on the contract because the supplier knows that they have committed to something with you in front of all of their peers. That's what we mean by face, all right? Maintaining face in some cultures, in China, in other cultures too, in Southeast Asia, sometimes has a greater burden or a greater cost than actually, you know, having your name tarnished in another country that you're never going to visit, okay? Or getting a court ruling, okay? That not everyone sees that, okay? But knowing that you have been shamed in front of your peers, that's where face has much more power. Future orders, it helps you keep out of court. If the supplier knows that you're going to have future orders with them, then that gives them a greater assurance that your relationship has much more value. And we call that, in theoretical terms, we talk about it's a shadow of the future. In other words, if that shadow of the future is longer and longer and longer, like further out into the future, then you as a supplier will have more confidence to stay with that relationship and do the right thing by the relationship. Use a supplier with physical infrastructure. That make sure the supplier owns the factory and they just didn't show up to the factory to show you the factory, just to pretend that they have the factory and they don't really have the factory. Don't worry, that happens. That keeps you, helps you after the court. If there's a court ruling, then you can go to the factory and claim assets, claim penalties and things like that. If they don't have physical infrastructure, then a court ruling may not be able to help you. Alternative dispute resolution clauses, and I'll talk briefly about that, but the video is very, very clear and I don't want to talk too much further than what I covered in the video. And the video only goes for, I think it's at 20 minutes or a little bit over. All right, what you've got here is a kind of what a contract looks like. And, you know, you have a purchase order, and like this is not directly examinable, but I just want to show you that, you know, you've got details of the purchase order at the top, but there's an example below of exactly what you are ordering. But it's a contract is more than that. There is all this little print that covers each of these items that I was talking about. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You can see down here the tooling ownership details, penalty for missed lead time. You see defect product management and IQC standard. You see all of this little print is where you are, they're actually put into contracts. And so when I say you should list and think about these, they are actually part of the contract. Lawyers help you with this. Why am I telling you this? Because yes, you may pay a lawyer to do this, but you need to still be aware that what the lawyers are expected to do, okay? You cannot just play dumb and assume that the lawyer knows everything, okay? You should know a little bit about any expert. You should know a little bit about any expert you employ. That probably goes for anything, not just supply chain management. Okay. So you've passed this course, okay? You've done the marketing research, you've chosen design, you've sought out design firm, you've visited a trade fair, 20, 30 suppliers. You did what you did last week. You had an RFQ for those masks and you did what you did last week. You picked out 3 suppliers. You narrowed down the supplier list. That's what you did last week. You have sought out a quotation from 15. You identified 4 suppliers to visit. So you may have 3 mask suppliers. What if you're going to order 30,000, 50,000 masks? Ideally, you would like to visit the factory. Of course, you can't at the moment because of country lockdowns, border closures, but ideally, you should visit the factory of the final narrowed list of the suppliers. You visit the factory, you have 1 supplier audited, you draw up a contract, you make a down payment, you make another payment, you pay the rest at the FOB stage. But there's some things that may go wrong. Before shipping, the supplier calls, they have not received payment at 50% stage. Or the supplier says they did not receive the payment, they're not releasing goods until you pay up. Or the supplier ships to port and your goods have problems, unforeseen by the auditor. Things happen. So what do you do now? Well, this is where the ADR, and I want you to watch the video. Just, again, this is about being aware of what you need to take away tonight. Here's the big takeaway. What is the least incursive clause or approach to dealing with a dispute? And what is the most? Okay, you need to know the hierarchy. Okay, the least is a letter of demand. Okay, then there's mediation, then arbitration, then litigation. Okay, with a letter of demand, you can still maintain the relationship. It's minimal cost, it's very quick, but sometimes suppliers may ignore it. Okay, they may ignore it until you do it again and you start threatening. And for some suppliers it may work, it may not work. So that's why alignment may be weak in this area. Okay, they're the ingredients of a letter of demand. What about mediation? Well, this is something that is it's more voluntary. That is, both parties need to agree to it. And it should be written into the contract that if there is a dispute over the payment, the product, the quality, and any of the terms of the contract, then it shall be resolved by mediation. And you make that very, very clear in the contract. If that is not written in, it's very hard to propose that when something goes wrong. So this is, it's very, very informal. And this is probably your last chance of working with the supplier before the relationship goes sour. Because when you go to, let's finish mediation. All right, the relationship, you can still preserve it. Cost is relatively low, time taken is low, and the alignment may be a little bit stronger. Alignment meaning, what is the chances that you can get a solution if something goes wrong? All right, a little bit higher compared to letter of demand. Okay, so arbitration. Okay, so in China and even in other developing countries, they do have rules of engagement for arbitration. It's not just China, not just US, not just Europe. Lawyers will tell you about that. The relationship is going to break down. Cost still low, time low, but you have more power. So in some ways, what are we doing here? In some ways, and I can draw, basically it's what you're starting to see now, it's a trade-off between getting your outcome here, all right, and the souring of the relationship here. You with me? All right, as it's like a seesaw, right? As a seesaw, as we put more power on the alignment, if we try and make this stronger, the relationship is going to go south. Okay, so that's, I want you to visualize, the different stages you can go through and just understand that, well, once you get to this stage, then well, you can kiss the relationship goodbye. And then finally we go to litigation, and you don't need me to tell you that the relationship's ended. And if you have proper terms of agreement and the contract in place and you have evidence, then it's likely you'll get what you want. And by the time you've got to here, well, you know the seesaw, don't you? It's like this, isn't it? That is, the relationship is down here, but the alignment is up here. All right. So that's the big takeaway. I'm here not as a lawyer pushing this. I just want you to be aware of, what are the stages that you can go through in seeking redress when something goes wrong. All right. And then there's some comparison there. So let me just finish up. There's some golden tips. And the main tip is, have your paper trail, have evidence, make sure you have an ADR clause in the contract. That's something that you've got to get the supplier to agree to. And a lot of suppliers may not agree to it, but that's something you need to think about ahead of time. All right. So let me just finish there, and just want to remind you that there's a video on this, and the big thing I want you to take away is the hierarchy. That is the hierarchy between letter of demand, arbitration, mediation, arbitration, and litigation. Let me just close that. That was quick, wasn't it? So there's a video on that. And by the way, there's a video in Udemy on that. And so what you could do, just to sharpen your knowledge in this area, is skip over the video in Udemy and go through the MCQs. Sound like a plan?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
good. All right. Okay, good. Great. I'm glad you're still with me. I can't see you when I got the PowerPoint showing. Wow. Exciting, exciting, exciting. Now we get to the good stuff. Now it's 8:55 here. Let's have a break for 7 minutes. Is 7 minutes? What do you think?
Okay. Yeah.
Are we negotiating here? Does anyone for 8? No one for 6. 8 minutes. That's a lucky number in Chinese. So let's do 8 minutes. Okay. I'll see you back in 8 minutes. And thank you for tuning in. And in the next section, I need a little bit more interruption and questioning. I'm expecting it from you. I want some participation. We want to go a little bit more energy, okay? And I might put you in a breakout group, so get ready. You have 8 minutes. I'll see you soon. Bye. Okay, let's have a look at our second PowerPoint slide file. Do you all have this PowerPoint in front of you? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Hello. Have we got we've got a latency problem here. All right, so I'm going to put my video on. Sometimes I record myself and put it next to the video, and it's better than what Zoom is doing. 10 times better, but it's all good. Okay, we're going to start off with breakout groups. Are you ready with breakout groups? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, who likes breakout groups? No comment. Or does that mean a no?
No, but let's do it.
I like that. I like that attitude. That is so cool. I love that. No, but let's do it. Well, then we do it fast, right? We have speed meeting. But this time I'm going to show you something, and it's going to, hopefully it will fascinate you, and it'll show you something that you will never see in the press. Now let me find it before we do tonight's presentation.
Me too, but I'm so nervous and I'm so mean.
Okay, supplier blacklist. Okay, this is going to drive some of you crazy, but I like to do that sometimes. All right, I'm going to share something, and I need you to pay attention. Can you all see this?
Yes.
Now, this is not, I haven't been fly swatting here, but here's what I want you to look at. I want you to see for yourself. Okay. We can make it easier for you to read by okay. Let's get some juicy ones, huh? Okay, let's do our breakout room. Of course, the question you ask is, well, what's the breakout doing? All right, breakout rooms is only, what I'm going to do is I want you to read some of the experiences of real buyers with suppliers with things that have gone wrong. Okay, I want you need to read it for yourself and not just listen to me as a researcher or lecturer or whatever, but you need to see the data for yourself. So what I'm doing here is posting in the breakout room. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share the first 30 rows here, and I want you to scan through and make a note. Maybe if in a team of 4, you have a look at 4 different parts. Then after 2 minutes, I'm going to scan from number 34 to number 68. Then after 2 minutes, I'm going to go 69 up to 100. Okay, so you have 2 minutes to have a quick look, and I want you to start to note down the things that have gone wrong. You with me here? Hello? So when
Yes.
you're in the breakout room, can you still see the screen share, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay,
No,
and
I
that
don't
means you
think
can
so.
talk.
But it's really small though.
Really small.
Yeah, haven't you got glasses? Okay. Is that better?
Not really.
I can't really read the words.
I can see it now.
Now it's a little better.
Yeah.
But when you put us to the breakout room, though, we won't be able to see this.
Yeah.
Why?
You I mean, because we're in different rooms, unless it's what do you say?
Unless we have the file, otherwise we won't be able to see.
All right. Okay. Well, let's pass on that then. Okay. So have a look at this. You got start reading. Can you read this now? Yes or no?
Yes.
Can you, as it is?
Yes.
All right.
It will take a bit of time. Quite small though.
Okay, we do it now. So start reading now and start. I want you to have a look at some of these issues. I'll give you 90 seconds just to have a look at some of these issues. Okay, I'm going to go to the next one now. Okay. I'm going to go to the next one now. I'm going to go to the next one now. Okay, last one. Okay, let's just stop there. So what comes to mind looking at all of that?
Communication issues.
Communication. What else?
Scam.
Scam.
Scams about advance payments. I mean, that's the biggest issue.
Yeah, on
Quality.
no response. Yeah.
Contract breach.
Bunch of complaints.
You cannot hold the suppliers accountable. So if they mess up, there's no way you can return your money. No one has ever returned their money from all the people that have concerns.
Dissatisfaction.
Okay, so number one, communication. Someone mentioned scam. What else? Did people lose money? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Yes.
What else?
Time.
Product defects.
Defects. What else?
Quality reimbursement.
Huh?
No reimbursement.
What about number 9?
Consumer.
Yeah. Okay. Quality.
Delay.
Delay. Hey. All right. What else?
Asking for more money in between.
Yeah, exactly. More dollars, more dollars, more dollars. All right. This is very. So, do you think this is just China?
No.
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 So, do you want me to keep going so you read all the rows? Who wants me to keep going? Put your hand up if you think you've seen enough. I'll keep going if you don't put your hand up. You better put your hand up. Put your hand up now, please. Okay. 1 person. 2. All right. Well, let me just share again. All right. Stop share. Okay. Let me share the screen again. Let's just go back to it. I want you to feel emotional about this. Okay. What if you were any of those buyers? How many? What is 146 here so far, right? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So let's go. Let's go to 160. Oh, let's go to 170. Let's go to 200. How many more do you want to watch? None of you are crying yet. I'll keep going until you start crying. This is bad. Look at that, 224. All right. Class, I just want to impress on you how real the problem is. Okay. Do you want me to keep going? Yes or no? Hello?
No.
500.
That's a lot.
Too fast.
Okay. Do you want me to keep 600? You think that's enough? Let's go faster. All right, 900. Okay. All right. So, all right. So you're 1200 here, right? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Okay. So this was from 2013, 2017. Okay. Right now, I've got the data now. We're up to 2,400 complaints. Okay. All right. Oh, but here's the deal. I just want to show you something more. Stay with me here, because I want you to see that this is not just a China thing. Let's just have a look here. All right. We can go back and look at, let's have a look. We go back right to the start. Okay. Suppliers. Where are the suppliers from? Okay. It's not just China here. Have a look. Right. Some of these are Chinese provinces. Now, this is Australia. Okay. Of course, there's China ones in here, but don't just, we're not just picking on China here. We can go through a lot of other, London, Panama. Okay. Hong Kong, Ho Chi Minh City, okay, Central Java, as you can see, this is, I could say out of those 1,200, yeah, about 800 China, but there's 400 from other countries. So this is not just a China thing, all right? I don't want you to think that this course is just about China here. And, you know, you're supplying from you're getting from any supplier outside of your own country, then you're bound to run into problems if you don't have the contract right, if you don't have the right relationship, or you haven't visited the factory. Like here's one from Korea, okay? So, you know, no California, okay? So just North Wine, this is in Germany. So just want to show you that Sao Paulo, okay? And so we're all over the place here. Okay, so that's the data. And this is the supplier blacklist data. Have you heard about this before? Anyone?
I think you've mentioned it before.
Yeah, mentioned it before. All right. So the good thing about this is you can actually go into supplierblacklist.com and see this data. You can, you can't see all that detail because my partner, Mike Bellamy, he owns supplierblacklist.com. So he allows me to have access to the data. But as a reader, you can actually go and see a lot of this data for yourself. You type in a factory, and if it's been a subject of complaint, then it will be in the blacklist and you can see it. Let me just share with you now. Now we go to what have I done with this data? So let's go for my final presentation, and then we can have some questions as we go through. Sound like a plan? Do I hear you? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, so let's move this. Let's crank this. Okay, so I've got my camera on. So I'll make sure that this is filming properly. Okay, and then put on video, and then we film. Okay, this is great. All right, so I'm going to stop share. I'm going to make sure that when this presents, that it's on that side, this one minimized, and we've got Zoom meeting over here, and then we share again. Good. Projecting governance. And that's what this working paper is about. We're using data from the supplier blacklist. And what is very important here is the following. We all see, can you all see? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
great. So now, all right. Now, here's something I want you to, I'm going to share the computer sound here because it's very important.
I doubt I'm the only one that has experienced that. As a matter of fact, over the last 4 or 5 days in traveling mainland, and obviously, you know, seeing another foreigner, I always introduce myself.
Yes.
And I've heard a lot of horror stories. Wow. So what I have experienced over the last, I guess, you know, 20 some odd years, yes. I am not the only one. I am not the only one. One company was very interesting, you know, at this show here, a lot of power banks are being sold.
Yes, I've seen them everywhere.
They're everywhere, and normally a power bank is, you know, comprises of a high capacity battery.
Right.
Which is, you know, it's heavy. You can tell a good high capacity battery.
Yes.
And one that isn't just by the weight.
3,000 3,000 milliamps? 4,000
Yeah,
milliamps?
3,000 milliamps, 2,800, whatever they are.
Yes.
And I met one buyer from Norway who was here, and you know, he saw my little speaker thing. He says, "Oh yeah, I read about it, and you know, I didn't have the chance, but I've heard a lot of good things about the seminars that were coming out at Global Sources, both from Mike and myself."
Yes.
And he says, "I have a story to tell you." I said, "Oh really?" So for once, I'm not telling the story. And he found a supplier, and the supplier, you know, started out selling, you know, 100, then 1,000, then 5,000 of these power banks over the last year.
Yes.
Since the October show, and he was very, very happy with the quality.
Yes.
And all of a sudden he says, you know, now we started to receive complaints from the last shipments that were now released to his clients, which were retailers in the cell phone marketplace, that the batteries wouldn't last long.
Wow.
And, you know, everything is the same, and, you know, they couldn't tell. And these things are sealed, obviously.
Yes.
So, so ahead of the show, he opened one up. And what they did is they epoxied sand inside the battery power bank.
Yes.
And had a smaller capacity battery. Now, in Europe and America, the labor to put sand in a little plastic thing and encapsulate it to add weight is expensive in labor.
Yes.
Obviously, it's not here because he ordered 20,000 of these.
20,000?
20,000, and they're all defective.
Now they're defective in that they don't last as long as you expected, because it's only 2,000 milliamps instead of 3,500 milliamps.
Correct. And the manufacturer put sand inside the housing to keep the weight the same.
So when the inspector inspects it, they don't see a difference. If weight is a measurement, the inspector has to. Okay, so very important. I just want you to hear for yourself that these are real issues you need to deal with. There's not theory here. Okay, so when we talk about you need to check the boxes on the factory, the supplier, the QC, and more about that next week. Scams are ripened out there. This is very critical. So here's the context. Obviously, there are big and small buyers. I showed you right at the start. The big buyers, they know how to do things, and they have the power to monitor the factory. Like, good for them. They know what to do. But the supply chain, MMCs, they know how to do this, but the Amazon, the small B2B supply chain, the SMEs, they don't have all of the resources that the big MMCs have. And often they need to spend more time on screening mechanisms like selection, certification, factory audits, license verification. And like what you did with the masks last week, you know, there's so much you can do, but you also need to visit the factory, which we can't do at the moment. But what MMCs do more, and which small buyers stop at, is developing mechanisms. They spend more time on enhancing productivity of the supplier and make sure that the supplier can actually do continuous improvement over time. We're not talking about that tonight. We're actually talking about the short-term contracting, which most small buyers and SMEs are involved in. And if you have a look at, you know, it's quite obvious that Alibaba, they're under fire from a lot of global brands for rampant counterfeits. This was the case many years ago, less the case today, but it's still a challenge. And even Taobao, which any of you could go to Taobao tonight and order hundreds of anything and get that set up in Amazon in less than a week and try and sell it. But you don't know if you got a fake or the real thing. So there's many steps that these platforms are taken to help you out. But at the end, this is your concern as a buyer. You cannot say, oh, just because I'm ordering from Alibaba, then that factory is good. Some of you thought that when you did the RFQ for masks. No, you need to go further and actually double check, is the certification they have, is that real or not? And Alibaba may tell you it's real, but you need to go one step further, like I did with the FDA certificate. So small buyers really are limited to maybe short-term contracting where they try and do some selection, certification, some factory audits, some license verification. And what we tried to do with the supplier blacklist is to think about, because basically we've got 1,200 complaints about, and they're all complaints. So it's not like we have 600 good suppliers and 600 bad. We have 600 bad suppliers, and then we have 600 suppliers that are even worse. You with me? Who are bad and worse. You don't want to source from any of those suppliers. So what we did do was we defined the dependent variable. That's in your regression. The dependent variable is the objective function, as to distinguish between a complaint that was more associated with, say, quality, maybe a missed delivery, maybe a minor defect, compared to a complaint against a real scam, that is, they took your money and you got nothing, or they took your money and you got sand in your power bank. It's, in other words, this is a strategic opportunism by the supplier. And we want to separate that from myopic opportunism. Myopic opportunism is that we don't have, it's out of our control, or we didn't intentionally set out to defraud the buyer. It just so happened that the raw materials came late, so then the delivery was late. We had trouble with assembly, so the quality wasn't good. We didn't deliberately set out to do the wrong thing. So we've got those suppliers that didn't deliberately set out to do the wrong thing, and we've got those suppliers who did. Those that didn't deliberately set out to do the wrong thing, we gave a 0. Those that did, we gave a 1. And so what we do is do a logistic regression to try and predict what mechanisms buyers may have had in place that would reduce the likelihood that they were a subject to the latter supplier, that is, a supplier that set out to strategically defraud the buyer. Ah, wow. Okay, so you know there's a high risk of scams, especially if there's small orders, e-buyers, there's high value small side product like electrical goods, you know, high value, small size, famous Western brands, a sloppy buyer. Okay, so the truth is about international brands. Made in China doesn't mean available in China. Okay, people think, oh, because Apple is made in China, maybe I can get a cheap Apple iPhone off the back of the factory in China. No, that's impossible to do. You cannot do that. You can get a copy iPhone from China, but it's not made by the Apple factory, and it's not a real iPhone anyway. They're different. Okay, you're not going to get out the back door from a factory by a major MNCs. Okay, so here's an example of a scam. Have a look at this. What do you notice about this website? Quick, yell it out, please. Come on, yell it out. Energy, quick. It's 9:36 here. We're on our last half hour. Look at this website. What do you notice first? Is there many different products, or is there a single product?
Single
product.
There's many different products. Many. Okay, what about the top one? Have you ever seen that product before?
No.
Seems really strange, isn't it? It looks good when you see it and you're thinking, wow. Actually, this product, this website, you can buy this product for $200 US. Did you know that?
Oh.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, there's other motorbikes. There's TVs. Oh, they got New Year gift. They got Segway. They've got motorcycle. They got everything. Oh, well, let's have a look at the factory, shall we? Because that's what you did last week, right? For the RFQ. Let's have a look at the factory. Oh, by the way, there's all these products you can get from the same factory.
Scam.
Can you imagine one factory that makes all this? Impossible. All right, let's have a look. Factory size, 5,000 square meters, Jiangsu province. 80 to 99 people R&D staff, 80 to 99 people QC staff. That is a dead giveaway. All right, no factory has that many people in R&D. Okay. All right, factory size below 5,000 square meters. Location, okay, 5,000 square meters. That's 50,000 feet. Impossible. Okay. So suddenly, if you look closely, you can start to see problems. All right. Oh, by the way, no, that's not all. This scam artist said, oh, don't worry about your bank transfer. Just use Western Union. And by the way, Western Union is very, very fast. They can get the money fast and they don't need to have ID, and it's not as secure, but you can do transfer very, very fast. They take 15, 20% off the transfer, but it's very, very fast. All right. So it's a dead giveaway. Never send money via Western Union to a supplier. Okay. And I'm not going to play all of this.
Very interesting, the people from France that just showed up and their experience in dealing with manufacturers here, where they found a product, and typically, you know, we always recommend that, you know, someone that buys product pays 30% down and then 40% on proof of shipping. So not before shipping, but here's the pickup that's already been made by the carrier, and then the 30% afterwards within, you know, 7 working days back in the home country to make sure that the product's good. So unfortunately, this fellow gave the 30% down and then 70% on shipping, but not on proof of shipping. So they lost $200,000, and when they went to Shenzhen to the factory was gone.
Gone. The factory's gone. How much did they lose?
200,000.
What, ringgit? How much did they lose?
$200,000.
Yes, don't leave out the currency, okay? Big difference, right? All right, how many of you can afford that?
Not me.
By the way, listen to this.
Just terrible, just terrible. So it's what we're preaching here in education. It's rampant, and here again they lost another $200,000 in another situation.
There was another one. They lost a second lot of 200,000. That's 400,000. Okay. Wow. This is amazing. All right. So this class, this is not theory. This is real. Okay. If you do not pay attention to what we're teaching, all right, these are things, there are clues to find what a real scam is like, and they are rampant today. Like, there's millions of people around the world who think they can be a buyer. All right, not just 100,000, not just 10,000 people. There's always a percentage of that million people that do not do what we're teaching tonight, what we're teaching last week, what we're teaching the week before. Okay, you may think, oh, I would never do that, but that doesn't mean that the scams are not there. Okay, they are there and they're gone. All right, so here's some typical scams. First is a classic one. That is, you pay a deposit, nothing shipped. That's classic. But what about it's on its way? You ask for proof of shipment. The scammer sends proof. You pay dollars, you get a box of rocks, just like the sand in the power bank. Okay, and so here's another one. It's on its way. A Frenchman working out. She's excited about smartphone. This was 5-6 years ago. She knew wanted clones of something, looked like Apple. She brought the clones, but they were expensive ones. They weren't counterfeits. They were locally branded product, took similar to an Apple iPhone. She showed proof of shipment, bill lading, and then she would pay in full. So they actually shipped a bunch of broken cell phones. So the shipping document says there's a couple of pallets worth of cell phones coming, and she paid the money. Later, she found out they were all junk. They were broken. Okay, so 100,000 euro gone. Okay, these are real stories. And then this is milk the cow. So there's a lot of different, and Shanghai Surprise, that's another one that's very important that you need to be aware of. And Zhejiang Screwjob. This is, you know, Shanghai Surprise is where a bad person in the factory or someone that has left the factory, they actually get the hotmail of the person in management in the factory, and then they will actually send an email to the customer saying, oh, there's a new bank account. We need you to update your bank information and send it to a new bank account. And the unsuspecting customer thinks, oh, okay, I can see, oh, the email's from the same manager in the factory. Oh, I'll change the bank account. But they don't check. And then they send the money to the bank and the factory doesn't receive it. And the money's gone. So this happens. And this is a similar one where the person is actually colludes with the management of the factory. So the management know it's going on, but they still have the excuse, oh, we didn't receive the money. And then they blame it on the scammer, but the management are in cahoots with the scammer. So these things happen. And as I've been teaching you 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, this week and next week, there's simple things you can do to make sure it doesn't happen. Probably what's the most important thing you can do? Quick answer, please. 3, 2, 1. Hello? What's the most important thing you can do?
Research.
Yeah, but what exactly? What? Come on. What?
Verify the verifications.
There's lots of little things, but what is the most obvious thing that you can do? Come on, you're not a lawyer, not an auditor. What is the most obvious thing? What did you learn from last week?
Ask questions.
Questions.
Well, ask lots of questions, but what's the big thing that you should do that a lot of buyers do not do? And you can't do it. You can't do it at the moment. You cannot do it at the moment. What is the big thing?
Visiting the factory.
Yes, visit the factory. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. The number of buyers I meet that they think they can source and they get away with, they don't need to visit the factory. All right. Like it's totally obvious. Now, yeah, it's nearly impossible in 2020 to visit the factory, but up until now, that's a big thing. Okay. So let's have a look at my research on that 1200 database that I took you through on all those scams. Okay. Let's have a look at, first of all, this is some of the theory. Often multinationals, they are happy to pay the extra costs to outsource. That is, in other words, buy from suppliers, like Apple buys from Foxconn. Apple doesn't own the factory, but they could own the factory. But if they would own the factory, then they'll face political risk, xenophobic risk, environmental risk. Something goes wrong with that factory, then people will blame Apple. But at the moment, Apple outsources to Foxconn, and then Apple just has to pay control costs and coordination costs. In other words, they have 600, 700, 800 people on the ground in China to manage all their suppliers, but they don't own the suppliers. Why don't they own them? Because they don't want political risk, they don't want xenophobic risk, they don't want environmental risk. You with me here? Like if something goes wrong with any factories that Apple owns in a foreign country, then there could be protests. The government can shut down the factory. The government's not going to shut down their owned factory, but they're more likely to shut down a foreign-owned factory if something goes wrong. You with me here? All right? All right. So this is political, xenophobic, environmental. This is why the multinationals, they're happy to pay lots of control costs and coordination costs. Just going to resume recording here. We share the screen. Okay, so here we have, so that's what I just explaining to you. This is real, and what do the big multinationals do? They have scorecards, they have multi-sourcing, they do lots of things. We're going to talk about that in week 9 and week 10. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is quickly go through, and we'll just have our one last chance to do a breakout group, and this is the following. Let me just bring this to the fore. Okay, here are all the different things that you could do as a small buyer. Okay, I want, how many things do you have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You have 9 things. Okay. I want you to pick out the 3 best things that you think are most important. What are the 3 best things? What are the 3 out of these 9 you think are most relevant to avoiding those suppliers with the scams? Now remember, I'm going to show you the results later, but now I want you to think about. And so we just have our one little breakout group, and it's only going to be for 4 minutes, very, very quickly. Okay. The question is, I want you to pick out what 3 out of those 9 things do you think are most relevant to the minimization that your complaint in that supplier blacklist is a scam. In other words, let me repeat. What 3 items out of those 9 do you think are most significantly related to the probability that your complaint in that supplier blacklist, and you saw the blacklist list, the 1,200 complaints, is a scam? You remember? So you want to think, which of these 9 are negative related to the scam? In other words, if the buyers had any of these three of these 9 items, then it's likely that their complaint is not a scam. You with me? You understand what we have to do here? So let me have a very quick breakout, very, very quick, because it's not fair that we don't have a breakout every week. Breakout rooms, 4 minutes, very, very quickly. Okay, we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 participants per room. All right, you've got 4 minutes, very, very quickly here. All right, energy, let's go. I'll write the question in the chat room. Are you in the breakout teams? Ginny, it looks like there's 1, 2, and 3. They're here, but they're not here. Is that right, Ginny?
Seems like it, yes.
That's all right. These things happen. We're coming back again. Welcome back. Look, this is our final exercise, and then we wrap up. And I hope you've all had a great night for tonight. Okay, so thank you for staying with us. Lots of energy. Our 2 groups presenting. Well done tonight, and we'll continue to consult with the groups that are presenting next week and the week after. 14, 13. Some of them are a bit slow in getting out of the breakout room. Okay, Nadia, how are you going there? Stay with us. Stay with us. Not long to go.
Oh, I thought you were asking me which ones. Okay.
Okay, let's just close the rooms. Okay, you're all back with us. Hello, everyone. Hello? Hello?
Oh, we're back.
I want to see you all. Let me just, okay, see you all. Great, great, great. Okay, so let's go. Group one, which one did you like? Let's just have a look. Let's see if I can, what I'm going to do, just change the sharing because I've got to change to another screen so then I can write on the screen as we're doing it. Our last exercise, and then we wrap up and then we're done. Okay, you got that? Right, so that's good. Okay, so breakout group one, what did you come up with?
Okay, so
Loud voice, please.
the group's decision is contract,
Wait a minute.
buyer,
Okay.
buyer QC, and buyer
Yes.
visit.
Buyer visit. Okay. Next.
My own personal opinion, it should be references instead of buyer visit.
Yeah, but you got to go with the group at this stage. But thank you for your personal.
Okay.
Okay, breakout group number two. I like that. I like personal opinions.
Our group went with buyer visit, third party QC, and contracts.
Okay. Group three.
Third party visit, third party QC, and contracts.
4.
Buyer visit, buyer QC, and then contingency payments.
Ooh, that's interesting. Okay. And 5.
Is verified business license, buyer visit, and third party QC.
Wow. 6.
We selected verified business license, buyer visits, and also contracts.
Wow. What am I? Have I all convinced you that buyer visit is the most important? Have I? I don't know. Let's just see what the data says, right? Okay. So based on, what you think and where you are at the moment, we have 1 and then 2. Is that right? Then what we have 3 and 4. 4. Okay. So there's our preference. Is that right? So what we did was we actually regressed this, the propensity that the supplier is a scam versus they just myopic. That is, they made a mistake, but they didn't set out to defraud the buyer. In other words, the buyer still got their product. It just was a delay or their minor quality problem or something like that. Whereas a scam is when they took their money and the buyer lost money, or they couldn't follow up. When they ring the factory or they ring the supplier, there's no one answering. You with me here? So do you think it'll be good to know if any of these are related to the reduced propensity that it is a scam? Yes or no? Who wants to find out? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so let's have a look. Okay, let's have a look at what the results are saying. Okay, so what we find is that these are all the different problems, the results, these are all the different complaints, quality scams, contract violations, scams, out of, there's 860 there. Notice a lot of industrial products, electronic products. So I tell buyers, if you want safety, just stick with sport and outdoors, office or clothing. Less likely you'll be scammed, okay? But if you're industrial electronics component, it's more likely you'll be scammed. There's different areas of China, of course. As I said earlier, there are suppliers in this blacklist that are from other countries. So this is not just picking on China. Buyers come from everywhere, including USA, Australia, UK, India, from all over the world. So it's not like that you just have rich, smart white people that are not being scammed. They can be scammed too. And, you know, there's people from Afghanistan, Malaysia being scammed. Top provinces from China. Okay. When the scam happened, a lot of them occurred at the initial order, not on the reorder. Experience, a lot of them occurred when it was in the first year or the 1 to 3 years. Notice that? Like 38, 48, 54% in the early stages, okay? But some scams occurred when more than 10 years. So even your experience doesn't eliminate the probability you'll get scammed. Formal contract. Yes, you have a contract and you still can be scammed. Or you visit the production site. Look at that. 83% did not visit the factory class. Are you hearing me here? Hello? Okay. You can see the problem this year. You cannot visit factories this year. That's a huge challenge for any supply chains this year. All right. Information on the business license. Accurate. You've got all this data. So let's go to the final part. Nationality, of course, is China, but there was a lot from other countries in the database. Okay, let's have a look at the results. And what were the top 3 again? Can you read them out? What were the top 3?
Buyer visit.
1, 2.
Third party QC.
And 3, contracts.
Contracts.
I think they were the top that you thought, right? Either 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3. Yes or no?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So you can go. It's easy to go back and have a look. We can. There you go. Buyer visit. Okay. Third party QC contracts. Is it? Yeah. Buyer visit. What did I say? What did I say? 2. Actually, 2 is contracts. Buyer visit, contracts, then third party QC. So let's have a look at what the results show. And let's see which group wins this time. There's 6 groups, and let's see who has the money. Let's have a look. Okay, number one, and the most marginal effect, remember that's the biggest negative, is which one? Third party QC. Number 2. Verified business. Number 3, buyer visit. Number 4, contracts. So you're on the money group. You did very well. You picked out the important ones. Well done. This is good. So this is, you know, this is a proper analysis of, we're talking, there's 1,019 data in this. And we can have a look at the differences between those at a contract and those that don't have a contract. Like you know, the big question here is, is contract not that important? Well, this is the marginal effect. Yeah, contracts are important, but not as strong as third-party quality check or verified business or buyer visit. But if you have a look at, when we look at if you don't have a contract, what's important is that you have FOB. What's important is you have a third-party quality check, right? But if you have a contract, what's important is the buyer visit and verified business. And what if you are from OECD? What's important is that you have all of these, third-party set and contract. But if you're not from an OECD country, that is, you're from a developed world, then it's more the buyer visit, third-party, and FOB. So, you know, they're not, contracting doesn't feature as big. All right. So I thought what's important is to show you the big thing I want you to take away is to think about how supplier scams are real, but let me just do a new share whiteboard, share. Supplier scams are, number one, they are real, okay? Number 2, I just want to show you that they're real. And I showed you political risk. I showed you, you can read those problems that buyers had. You listen to Charles Kermis, my friend, talk about it in the video. There is so much evidence that, you know, this is costing buyers lots of money. And often it's the buyers that are from developed economies that they have challenges because, you know, the contracts that they are using are not necessarily reducing their incidence of scams, but those are from OECD countries. The way they use contracts are more effective, and that's what some of that data is showing. But just to summarize here, as you said, the buyer visit, okay, third party QC, very important. Finally, contracts, very important, as you can see. All right, and that's what we talked about tonight. We talked about contracts tonight, right? Very, very important. Next week, guess what? We are on to remember our 3 circles. We are on to, remember, 2 weeks ago, we looked at the relationship and we asked, what did we ask? We asked lots of questions. This week, we looked at the contract, right? And, you know, what should be in the contract. And then we realized that, wow, contracts are important when we want to reduce scams. And you saw for your very own eyes. I just want you to see for your very own eyes that the data that we got from Supplier Blacklist shows the connection, that if you do this, it's not just theoretical. It's not just a lawyer talking that you have to have a contract and so the lawyers make money, but they are very useful in reducing scams. Next week, we're going to look at auditing. Okay, and so there's 2 presentations next week, which will continue our visits of factories. One of them is actually going to go through a real live audit that I did for a client. And so just want to thank, number one, the 2 teams that have presented tonight. Thank you for your energy, and just want to thank those in the breakout teams. And then you came back in and you participated. Thank you for staying with us. It's now 10:13, so a little bit over time, but I wanted to give you the full 3 hours. Can you spend 5 minutes to write in questions that you have in finishing tonight? Very, very important. If you can go to that link that we have and just fill in any remaining questions, or the big thing that stood out for you tonight is very important. As you know from the video that I made last week based on your questions, it helps you to just go over again the important things that you need to know. When last week was more the relationship, this week was more the contracting, next week we're looking at the auditing of the supplier. Okay, can you all go in and fill out the questionnaire, please, in Moodle? Kiba, can we do that? And while you're doing that, I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you. Just a reminder, there's 2 groups presenting next week. I think I spoke to both of those groups, and if you have any questions, please send me an email. The groups that have set down for week 7 will, that is group 5 and group 4. Is that right? Okay, group 4 is discovery. Is that the name of your group? Agya, Zihan, Chiyang, Sobaya. Okay, you're happy to meet with you sometime this week, just for 45 minutes, an hour, just to go over what sense or how can you approach the information about the IoT startups. And group 5, if you can meet me briefly also this week. So send me an email. Maybe we can meet together, group 4 and 5, if we can arrange a common time together. I think that would be lovely. Group 5, Joyce, Jessica, Yao, Nicole, and Sanzana. And that's for your presentations, not next week, that's for week 7. The groups for next week, I've already met with you and look forward to your great presentation. Appreciate your comments and your feedback and questions that you have on your mind. So just checking where you're up to. We have 3 people that have written in. Can I have more? We've got 4. And questions that you have. What's very important is, you know, how have I helped you in thinking about global supply chain management based on what we're covering? Or maybe I haven't helped you, but your feedback is very, very important now and not at, you know, at the end of the semester, of course, you'll give feedback, but as we go through the semester, and then that helps me to be more effective as we go through. And just very, very important, next week, one of the groups that's presenting on the audit will be a little bit different from the other group, because like the groups tonight, we're comparing 2 factories. Next week, the group, one of them is presenting the real live factory audit I did. And so they'll be giving a different angle to the presentation. And I've already discussed with the group how to do that. So that'd be something very special next week. That's a real live audit that I did of 2 factories for a client. And so you see for yourself, well, if you were to audit a factory, what are all the things that you have to check? And there's lots and lots of things to check. An average factory audit can take 2-3 more hours. If you have a team with you, it can go faster. Okay, we have 9 people, 10 people, 11 people. Appreciate your comments and any ways that we can help you in thinking about global supply chain management. This is real, guys and girls. And I just want you to have a wonderful week. And if you have questions, you know, during the Google Hangout, you can ask me anything, anytime. Happy to help. At no point in time, you should be uncertain as to what we're expecting of you in this unit. So happy to help. As always, we'll get this video up onto YouTube, and so then you can follow up on different parts as you need. And the final part, go into Udemy, join it for the purpose of looking at the multiple choice questions associated with the videos that we have been using in this class. Okay, and a list of those videos is in the PowerPoint called How to Score Well in this unit. Okay. Okay, so I'll help. We're going to close up. You're most welcome to leave. Just want to say thank you. And thanks for coming in and staying late. It's 10:19, so we're a little bit over time, but I think we did well. We covered a lot of things. And a reminder to the groups next week, focus on rehearsing so you can get closer to 12 minutes. We don't want you to be over that 12-minute mark. You want to stay close, and so you get into question time and really make sure that the whole class has some interaction. Okay. Well, it depends how you use those 12 minutes too. Okay, so it's if you have interaction during that time, you know, I can understand, but let's make sure you have a purpose in how you're using your time. Okay, so I just want to say good night. Okay, you can go and watch the Korean soapy now drama or whatever you're going to watch. Okay, I can recommend one for you. Let me know if you need a recommendations. Okay.
Good night, sir.
Bye.
Okay.
sir.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, sir. Good night.